it's not part of my class notes, but I don't know if y'all know or not, the title companies, you are their client. They're all vying for your business. And so if you have a title, if you have a closing on the south end of town, and Tamala, can I get you to mute your mic for me, just so we don't get the feedback when we start recording? Um, Whenever you have a closing on the, say, on the south end of town, 30 minutes away from your house, and you close at 10 o'clock in the morning, but it doesn't fund till 2 or 3 in the afternoon. If you'll let the title company know that you would like for them to courier that to you, do you know most title companies will do that? Ron and I, on our closings, we let our title company knows that's our preferred method. And so around 4 or 5 o'clock that afternoon, a courier will show up with a check for us, and we don't have to go back across town to get it. We don't have to worry about it. Some of them said, well, we won't courier it, but we'll overnight it to you. Okay, if it's on the south end of Austin and I don't have to drive 45 minutes to go get it, cool.
I
Okay,
just have
we're on.
mine wired into my account.
Yes, and thank you, because I don't normally do that, but yes, a lot of companies will do that as well. They'll just wire it into the account. You're right. So thank you guys for coming. There's about 45 of us in here, 44 in here. That's awesome. That's wonderful. So how do you get a split check DA every time? And what is a DA? We get that question from time to time. A DA is distribution authorization. It's also called a CDA, I think, on your checklist. It means the same thing. In order for the title company to pay your DA, in order to pay you, they have to have something from the broker, because remember, the brokers own all the contracts. And so they want to see that the broker is okay with you getting paid. And the way we're okay with it is we review your contracts and your documents, and Sky required as brokers to do that. That is part of our job. And so we're not really just picking on you. We have to be able to show track that we put eyes on the contracts, we reviewed it. And the document is sent from EXP over to the title company, which is really cool because some brokers don't do that. Our transaction team, they process the DA. Once I've approved the file, they process the DA, then they send it to the title company, and they also send a copy to you and telling them how to allocate the funds. So what is a split check DA? It instructs the title company to write 2 checks, a check to EXP Realty, so that would be the 20% usually going to EXP, and then the 80% that goes to you. Now remember, we do get this question a lot. If you signed up for the direct stock program, I want to make sure, is my screen working up here? Yes. If you signed up for the direct purchase program, then your split's going to be at a 75-25, because 5% is going to for the direct purchase of stock, whereas whereas the rest of it's going to be going, 5% goes to direct purchase stock, and then you get the balance of it. Do you always get a split check DA? Nope, you don't. If you turned your paperwork in late, if it's the rule at EXP is if it's less than 3 days before closing, you are running a very high risk of getting a single check DA split. And I will tell you guys, the more people that we're hiring, the better the systems are getting, the more they're working those out. And they're starting to work out about a week in advance. So please get your paperwork in within 48 hours of getting the contract executed. So let's run through this, and I can show you how you can get your check smoothly, easily, and hopefully every time. General information. If you'll see on the screen, we need contracts that are readable. If your documents are faded, it's very hard for us to read. I can't tell you all how many times I've had to tilt my head sideways or zoom in on something and really study it. I do my best, and I know Linda does as well, to try and give you the benefit of the doubt and try and read it. But if we can't read it, it is not considered a valid contract. So if there's times that you have the title company sends out the contract and it's really faded, at least upload the best version, even if it's not fully executed. Upload a really clean version that's easy to read, and then upload the poorly or hard to read version as well. So at least we have something to reference. Remember, in the event that 2 or 3 years down the road, if there's a lawsuit or a problem on the account and we need to be able to pull documents for attorneys, it's not going to look well if it's not readable. Make sure that you really are uploading the contract. True story. I was reviewing contracts one night and opened up what I thought was an executed contract to see Hallelujah chorus in there. It was one of the best laughs I'd had in a long time. So yes, it was a funny moment. But please, and it's easy to do. I tend to download documents, PDFs, put them on my desktop, and then grab it and upload it. So just give it a quick glance. Make sure you really are uploading something real estate related. Delivery of records to EXP via Skyslope. Per our policy and procedures, sales associates will deliver and upload to eXp Realty via Skyslope any records created or executed by the associate within 1 business day after creation or execution. 1. That's in the Texas policy and procedures. The company policy and procedures says 2, but our broker has chosen to choose 1. So again, as an agent, I know we get busy, but guys, it's the best place to put things. And after going through Hurricane Harvey and helping the agents over in Florida after Hurricane Irma, those that had their stuff in Skyslope, their lives are much easier. It's safe. Your papers didn't blow away. They didn't flood. They're not damaged. And now you have a whole team of people willing to jump in and help these people in time of crisis. And honestly, you never know when an emergency is going to hit your family or if you have to go out of town or something happen. So just please try and get it in a practice. Set an alarm on your phone or just put it on your checklist on your contract to close stuff. Within 1 business day, you upload your documents to Skyslope. It is the responsibility of the agent to upload their own documents. There has been some misconception for a while that the TCs were there to act as your transaction coordinators. The TCs are there to assist the brokers and the assistant state brokers. They are not, and they have been told explicitly by the company, they are not there to upload documents for you. You cannot just email them your documents and expect them to upload them for you. We have 4 or 5 TCs in the state of Texas, and there's 1,225 agents or 1,250. So there's way more agents than what the TCs are. Joy, can you stand in the back of the room to try and see, or you may try maybe log out and pop back in and see if it helps. The slides are on the screen behind me.
Thanks. I'll move.
Okay. The other thing that may work is on your next to your name, click View Avatar and see if you can look back behind you to see what's on the screen. Everything in the name.
Appreciate that. Thanks.
No worries. Everything is in the name of eXp Realty. So I do see quite often on listing agreements or in buyer rep agreements, it'll have name of broker SHEILA DUNAGAN. No, that's not correct. Name of broker Joy McKinney. No, that's not correct. The name of the broker on all of your contracts is always eXp Realty LLC. It is not Ron Dunnigan. It's not Linda Spence. It's not SHEILA Dunnigan. If you're wanting to differentiate on your buyer rep agreements and on your listing agreements, you can put name of broker would be eXp Realty LLC and then put in parentheses Joy McKinney agent. You can do that. But everything, the listing agreements, the buyer rep agreements are taken in the name of the broker, not your business name, not your former broker. If you're moving listings over, when you come over to join, we will ask for an amendment to the listing agreement. And we also want you to upload the listing transfer form with your listing agreements so that we can see that we really do have ownership of these listings. Please make sure you put the transactions on the right form. A non-realty addendum with a 1 to 4 family residential contract. Oh, I know this is referencing. So true story again, in reviewing a 1 to 4 family residential contract down in special provisions, it stated that the following items will convey with the property: a mule, a refrigerator, washer and dryer. That is not the place for it. So I don't really know where you'd put a mule, honestly. I don't know if that's a non-realty addendum or maybe a farm and ranch contract, I think would be more appropriate. But for the refrigerator, the washer, the dryer, those things go on a non-realty addendum. Make sure that you're using the correct form. If there's a mule and a barn and things, there's a great clue that it needs to be on a farm and ranch contract. It is the responsibility of the agent to make sure that each contract, addendum, disclosure, or other document pertaining to the transaction is fully completed. Please don't leave blanks. It's easy to do. I do know when you're in zip forms, if you put a 0 in there, it won't stick. So a secret is if you hit your space bar, then you can type the word 0. That's better than leaving blanks. Also make sure that you put I was reading the text chat, I'm sorry. Make sure that you select, you blue check marks on the surveys, on make sure things are checked off. Anytime you leave blanks, it's open to interpretation. So we want to make sure that things are fully filled in. The IABS is required on almost all transactions. We provide on the first substantive communication. Supposed to post the IABS on the business website, and we'd said before we started recording before the class, you can go to YouTube and search EXP Texas, and Ron had done a lengthy advertising class that addresses this. There's also a video in there that tells you how to post your IABS ideas. And then we need complete, accurate transaction info. So when you're in Skyslope and you start entering in information, and if you have 2 buyers, it's really easy just to enter 1 buyer because that's the minimum that it takes to get Skyslope to accept it. But RTCs are having to go back in and enter in all the other information. And it's becoming quite time consuming for them. So they have requested and asked, if at all possible, please enter in all the sellers, enter in all the buyers. They need all of that. Title company, very often they get people that enter in title company information to be determined, or will fill in later, and then they forget to fill it in. At the time the contract's executed, you know who the title company is. Put it in there. And if you don't have the address and well, then how are the TCs going to have it? How are they going to email your DA to the title company? I can't tell you all how often agents are upset because the DA was never received by the title company, for us to figure out, well, yeah, because the agent never told us who the title company was and they didn't input the information. So input all the sellers, all the buyers, because they have to have that in order to issue the DA. We have to have that for the auditors and for our files to be complete. This is going through the checklist that's in Skyslope. Let me stop just for a second and see are there any questions. Okay, Susan Walker, you're referring to a comment about putting the agent's info in parentheses. Okay, Sheila, can you touch on what to do on a listing agent, buyer rep, and sales contract if we're operating under an LLC's DBA?
Right. So you had said that on the listing agreement, if we wanted to put the agent's name in parentheses. If we're operating under a DBA, or should we put the DBA's name in parentheses, or the LLC?
I would still put but it's not the DBA that's out showing them property. I would put Susan Walker.
Right.
There are times when Ron and I were actively selling and marketing that I might put off to the side. I didn't even put Dunagan team. I would put Ron/Sheila Dunagan agents.
Okay, so just do the agent name. That's good. That's great. I always do, and I'm worried that my tax attorney is going to give me a hard time.
No. That has nothing to do with your finances. This has to do with procuring cause.
Okay, I get it. Got it. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
So, and then.
You're exactly right. I'm so sorry.
And Joy McKinney. Yeah. Was it a mule animal or mule RV? I don't know. Or was it shoes? I don't know what the mule was. That's all it said was mule. And I think that's the majority of it. So, okay, let me jump in now to the sales contracts and the check. I tried to follow this as closely as possible. I'm sorry, Ruby, do you have a question?
There's no slideshow behind you. The connection is closed.
I'm sorry?
The connection is closed on the slideshow behind you.
Okay, is it for everybody, or can you still see it?
No, you're still good on the video.
Yeah. Well, look, I see sales contracts. I think we're good.
Okay. Ruby, you might just know that I can email these out later, and then also too, it's being videoed so you can see the slides on the video as well. So on the sales contracts, we tried to go through the checklist that you see on the residential sales contract in Skyslope. So that first one, you see broker approval of file, that is for the brokers to type in there. There's nothing you need to load in there. If y'all are like me, I don't like to see a red box if, you know, it just bothers me. So, but that is for the broker to type in there when we approve the file. If something is missing, we type in there missing and we state the things that are missing in there. So that is, there's never anything for you to have to upload into box number 1. So you get a free pass on that one. Number 2 is the MLS sheet. It is required. If it wasn't in the MLS, well, then obviously you can't upload anything there. I would ask that if it's not in the MLS, then grab the tax documents or something. The reason we want to see the MLS is we're looking to verify the ownership. We're looking at the square footage, and we're looking that the commission being offered by the other brokerage, that's being honored in the contract. We're looking at year built. You know, there's need to be a lead-based paint disclosure. You know, you overlooked it and maybe the listing agent overlooked it. So that's the information that we're looking at there and why it's important. If it is your listing, we're also looking to make sure that you put 0% for sub-agent, because we don't ever pay a sub-agent. Then on number 3, the executed contract, obviously that's required, not sheet music, but an executed contract. We want to make sure the execution date is filled in. Please do not rely on any of the DigiSign documents to be able to date stamp it, because those can be jickied with. It depends on the time zone that they're signing in, and TAR said that it's effective based on the time zone that the property is at. So please take a moment and fill in the execution date. Page 9, it presenting the buyer. Take time, guys, and put in the listing agent's information. It's in the MLS. It's right there. It makes you look way more professional. As realtors, we're making really good money on the commission of sales. Take a few moments and fill it in. Your offer, it helps your offer stand out above other offers because it shows that you're a person that pays attention to details, that you're professional, that you want things to look good. Initials on every page. Make sure it's signed by all parties. Any changes, it's not uncommon at all that when you're negotiating a contract and the buyer submits it in, the sellers say, okay, we want to counter offer with this, this, and this, and sends it back, and the buyer says, okay, we agree. Usually we're missing one set of initials in there. Remember, any changes that are made on the contract needs to be initialed by all parties. You want to make sure that you're uploading into Skyslope any of the addendums and amendments that go with the contract. The notices should be filled in with appropriate client information, not your information. It needs to be client information. I know Linda likes to see on page 9, she likes to make sure that the license numbers are filled in for both of the agents. And then make sure that the percentage figures filled out in the middle of page 9. If you fail to put anything in there, you may have just decided to work for free. So please make sure that that is filled in as well. Number 4 in Skyslope is the earnest money receipt. That's when the title company gets the contract, and a lot of times they'll email the entire executed contract back to you. Yeah, I personally don't mind if you want to upload all of that in the executed contract, but we do want to see an earnest money receipt. If there's a finance addendum, most of the time there will be, then you use the appropriate one, the third-party finance addendum or the seller financing addendum. A loan assumption addendum, I don't think we're going to ever see those in our lifetime, but make sure you use the appropriate one. What the name of the property written at the top of the page, initialed by all parties on page 1, and then signed by all parties on page 2. Remember, if it's FHA or VA, the amount of the appraisal is to be of the property, not the amount being financed. It's the full price of the property.
If I can interrupt, if you guys will keep your pointers off of the screen, it gets a little distracting for the video.
And if you're wanting to see a bigger version of the screen, you can click on the little hourglass up there and it'll enlarge that whole screen so it's a little easier for you to see. And that'll enlarge it on your desktop. But yeah, on the video, it looks like our documents have the measles. So, so on number 6, mandatory HOA addendum. Please check one of the boxes on A1, 2, 3, or 4. So on A1, it's where the seller is paying. On 2, the buyer pays. 3, the buyer has already received the information and approves, or 4, they don't need it. Paragraph C under fees, make sure that's filled in appropriately. Make sure your buyer knows that they're going to pay any and all association fees or other charges associated with the transfer of the property, not to exceed X amount, and the seller will pay in excess. We want a dollar figure there. We don't want to see 50% or 25%. And then under E on authorization, title company needs to know who's authorizing them to pull the documents. Typically, most common, you'll see that it's the seller, but something needs to be selected under E as well. The non-realty addendum, again, no mules. That's pretty common to fill out. We want to see that if there's, refrigerator, washer, dryer, those things. We don't want to see those items listed in special provisions. The lead-based paint addendum. If a home is built prior to 1978, this is a federal law. Take just a moment. You see under B1 where there's a box there. The seller is to check that off. The seller is to check off something on B2. Under C is the buyer's rights. So the buyer selects something under C, 1 or 2. The buyer selects something under D, 1 or 2. And then the buyer signs, the seller signs, and this is one of the few documents that the listing agent as well as the buyer's agent also signs. Guys, if the federal government does an audit on your file and a lead-based paint is sitting in there, a lead-based paint disclosure is sitting in there, and you have failed to have your clients check boxes, or if you have not signed it as an agent, that is an $11,000 fine per missed box to you as well as to the broker. It can be a fine up to $44,000 to you as well as to the broker. That is huge. That they take it really serious, and we want you to be aware of it. In the event that you're in an intermediary relationship, Joy's question, what happens who is to provide the disclosure first? It's supposed to be part of the seller's disclosure, but I will tell you, if the listing agent messed up and they didn't provide it, I would, as a buyer's agent, I would provide it to my clients and have them initial and sign, and I would send it over to the listing agent. It's too big of a fine to take a risk. On the intermediary relationship.
Can I interrupt you real quick about that then? Because a lot of times that happens and the seller doesn't provide that and we send it over, but then there's a change because they added something, in their little section, the seller section. So do I then have to go back and initial that with my client?
Best practices, it would be great, but primarily you're wanting to make sure that your buyer is informed, and always provide that lead-based paint pamphlet to your clients on a home built before 1978. And many times I have my clients even digi-sign that lead-based paint so that I have proof in my file that I provided it to them.
I do the same thing. What about the renovation pamphlet?
I would.
Okay.
The best practices. I don't think you can over disclose. So on the intermediary, we get a lot of questions about this and some misunderstanding. And an intermediary, if there's 2 EXP agents, you're going to select that the broker will appoint. If you're acting as a transaction agent only, then the broker will not appoint. And if you represent one party and the other is unrepresented, you do not use an intermediary form. On the seller's disclosure, I think most of us are aware, as of 9/1/17, we have a new seller's disclosure form. They've updated the form and it is required. So if you currently have active listings, you need to have your sellers update that seller's disclosure form. That is a TREC requirement. That's not an EXP rule. I don't make the rules, I promise. This is a TREC requirement. So I'm sorry, but yes, we need to see updated seller's disclosure forms. We use the TAR 1406. We need it signed and initialed by all parties. And we need it completely filled out. There are times that investors will say, I've never lived in the property. I don't have any knowledge. Yes, they do. They pay the bills on that property. They pay for repairs. And so they have to fill it out. That is not an exemption. The date on that.
Can I ask a question?
Okay.
On the seller's disclosure, since it's recently changed, if we are a buyer, we're representing a buyer, does the seller need to provide that new form?
I would ask for it. They may not do it for you, but I would ask for it, and I would have it in writing where I did ask for it. Mary Jane, the update was as of 9/1/17. We do not ever want to use the TREC seller's disclosure. That is an EXP policy. And our VP of Brokerage Operations, Kathy Gordon, has stated we do not want to see the TREC seller's disclosure. We only want to see the TAR, or we will accept some of the association forms if they're good and detailed. But the TREC form does not provide enough information. So we didn't, as when we're the listing agent, we don't want to be using that. When we represent the buyer, you know, I've gone back and asked them for the longer form. Usually they laugh at me and tell me no, but at least I show that I tried. I asked. I was trying to look out for my client. If the property has a septic system, then that septic system becomes part of the seller's disclosure, that septic information about on-site sewer facility. If you look at the end of page 1 down here on this seller's disclosure, you see the last line, septic. If you select yes, then if yes, attach the information about on-site sewer facility. So they go hand in hand, the two go together. Can we ask as a buyer's agent for the TAR form? Yes, Susan, I have. They usually tell me no, but I have. I have a listing where the seller's disclosure attorney told them to use the TREC seller's disclosure. What should I do? You know, we always defer to attorneys. And if that's what they told you to do, then they're legal counsel. The updated seller's disclosure form is in the TAR forms. Anytime you're using TAR's website or zip forms, those are the most current up-to-date forms. If you created templates, then you have to update your templates. The templates do not automatically update. Number 12 in Skyslope is mud disclosure. That's not a required form because that's, you know, that's sometimes it's in a mud, sometimes it's not. Where do you find the mud disclosure? You find the mud disclosure online. Usually I'll go to my title company when we first got started, and then I was able to kind of learn the different MUDs that are around, and I Google it. Most MUDs will have their disclosure online that you can print off and have your client sign. TAR is Texas Association of Realtors. That is that every Antilla, if I'm saying your name correctly, that is all realtors are automatically a member there. And because we all are part of a board and an association, then we're all realtors. We've paid our dues to NAR. And so we're members there. They have zip forms there, and you can access zip forms. That's part of your national dues. The IABS, we talked about that a little bit. Information about brokerage services. That is a required form. That is to be completed upon first contact and communication about real estate with a party. And they are to initial that they've received it. They don't have to sign it because it's just a notice. It's a disclosure. But they have to initial it. If they decline to initial, then you can put on there declined to sign and then ask them to initial that. All 4 lines have to be filled in. We've made this as easy as possible for you all. We have pre-filled 3 of those lines for you. So if you email Linda or myself and ask for it, we'll send it to you based on which region of Texas that you're in. One of them has my information. If you're in Texas South, Central, or Coastal, I'm your supervisor. And so my information's on there. If you are in Texas North or East, I'm sorry, Texas North, East, and Coastal is Linda Spence. We just changed it up. I'm Central, South, and West. So all you have to do is fill in your information on the last line, your license number, email, and phone number. TREC has stated you have to have this filled in, all 4 lines, otherwise it is not valid. Number 14, the buyer's rep agreement. It is required when you represent the buyer. The way things are set up in Skyslope, if it is your listing, and then you have an accepted, you click the button for accepted contract, it comes up that the buyer's rep is required. Please know, we do not expect you to ask the buyer's agent for their buyer rep agreement. That's just a default setting in Skyslope. And when we go in to review the documents and we see that it's a listing, then we change it to not required. So we're able to fix that. Okay, for those that are saying that Ron changed it and he removed us, let me clarify that. That is for the online, for the IABS that's online, on your websites or any place that it's displayed on Facebook or the links back over to it. You're correct. It has Ron's information in all 3 of the upper lines. That is for ease of use, because just like how I forgot what region I'm in, Linda and I, from time to time, regions will be changed up. And so we didn't want to be constantly going back to the agent saying, okay, well now, Sheila's in coastal again, change that information. Get easy. It is still perfectly compliant to have Ron's information on all 3 lines. So the first line's eXp Realty, so on and so forth, and Ron Dunnigan as the broker, Ron Dunnigan as the supervisor. But for day-to-day contract usage, we're trying to minimize so Ron's not receiving 100 phone calls a day. Linda is the supervisor, Sheila's the supervisor. So we didn't mean to confuse it whenever we did the online stuff, but it's just we had to send those forms into conversion and sync, and they were uploading them for us. And we didn't want to be in a position of having to update that again in the future. That makes sense. Janice, I'm just curious as to if you're welcome to use it one way or the other, but the ones with Ron's information on it just should be for online. And then on the contracts, whenever you're using it with handing it out to agents and stuff, then typically you have Linda and myself's information on there. Joy, let us know on your sync one that doesn't have one. It should. So if you'd send that over to me, I'll forward that on to Jeffrey Bittner. He's heading that up for us. So Janice, with it being in your email, is it a link that you have in your email that links back to those forms that Jeffrey did for us? Is that where it's coming from? Gotcha.
If you guys, let me kind of interrupt just for the video. If you guys have a question, if you don't mind just saying it out loud, because the people that are watching the video can't read that little box.
Understood. I have the Texas Commission Consumer Protection Notice on my sync site, but not the IABS. None are present that I see.
Okay, so if you'll send an email to myself and Jeffrey Bittner, then he can get that updated for you. Thank you. Perfect. And I'll try and stay on the slides and answer the questions afterwards. Let's do that. I think that'll help the flow a little bit. The buyer's rep agreement, went over that. It's required when you represent the buyer. I promise we're not asking you to, when it's your listing, we're not asking you to get it from the other agent. The general info and notice to buyers. This is not a required form, but I will tell you all, it is fantastic. The way I explain it to the buyers is this is your word bank. This is your vocabulary list. It is stating in this form that the square footage, the school zones, the criminal activity, all of that is on the buyers to confirm. This is a fantastic, fantastic best practices form to hand to your clients, have them sign it, hand them that signed copy, and then you have them sign a second copy and keep it with your files. If the property is, could be prone to flooding, Houston, you guys are, I think, recognize this big time right now, that all because you're not in a flood zone doesn't mean you won't flood. That's covered in this document. Tells the buyers they may have to join an HOA. They have to, confirm the square footage. It is a fantastic form. Not required, but it is a best practices form. The item 16 on the checklist is a survey. If a survey is being done, we ask that you upload it in there. What a great place to keep it. Now your buyer gets ready to sell the house in 3 years, you can actually go back in the archive files in Skyslope and pull it for them and hand it to them. A T47, those two items go hand in hand, especially when it's your listing. If the contract, if you go back and look at how that reads, it says the survey and T47 are to be delivered within X number of days. That T47 is to be signed and notarized. In Skyslope, there's miscellaneous addendum not listed. That's the seller's lease back. I think of some other examples. Contingency offer, things of that nature. Under the miscellaneous docs, that's a great place to put any of your emails, copies of text, FHA addendum, any of those items. And then item 21, the final walkthrough and acceptance. This is a best practices to always use this. And again, if you're in the Corpus or Houston area, please make sure you're using these on the properties that were under contract before the storm. Even those things have gone under contract after the storm. We want to make sure those buyers are comfortable with what they're getting and what they've signed off on. That you have that in your back hip pocket in the event that there's an issue. Months after they moved in, that house is smelling funny, and they had no idea there was water damage. Well, you had the opportunity to inspect it and do a walkthrough, and you signed off on it. So we want to show that we are realtors who practice best practices. A referral agreement. So if you picked up this deal and you closed this buyer and it was a referral to you, upload the referral agreement. And if the agent is outside of EXP, we need their W-9 so we know who their broker is, where to mail the check, where to send it. You can find the W-9 and the referral agreement under working docs and then office docs. Make sure you're using the ones for Texas. There are forms in there for California, Connecticut, and make sure, I think all that's in there is the 2017 form, but make sure you're using the current W-9 form. The copy of the CDA, you can't upload that there because that's going to be, remember, our DA team's going to upload that for you. So if you're wondering later, there's times that people will email me and ask me, where's my DA? Well, it's in Skyslope. So if they didn't get a copy for some reason, if you all would please check your Skyslope to see if it's there. In the event that you take a commission advance, whether it be e-commission, there's several others out there, then we upload the commission advances there as well. We don't approve all commission advance companies, and so please make sure and check with us to make sure yours is approved. What we're looking for is that those commission advance companies are only looking to the agent for payment, not the broker. And then the signed closing disclosure is required. You cannot upload it before closing typically because we want to see it signed, and that doesn't happen until the closing table. So we ask that you upload it within 2 days after closing. So our settlement team has to have that in order to fully close out the transaction. Please, just while you're at the closing table, take a glance and make sure it's showing that eXp Realty is listed and that it shows the amount of commission that we're receiving. Some of the title companies won't disclose the commission amount to eXp Realty. We have to have that on there. That's a requirement. And then in the unfortunate event that there's a termination and a release of earnest money, that's the last line on there that you can upload that as well. On the questions real quick, let me look and see before we move on to leases. Oh, what do we put in the blank at the top of the general info and notice to buyers, both buyer and broker name? Yes. If I am a notary, am I allowed to notarize my client's T47? I'm guessing no, since I stand to gain by commissions, but just wanted to verify. Best practices is to have somebody else do it for you. And I will say there's oftentimes I find another agent within our brokerage that was a notary, and so I would notarize theirs for them, and they would notarize my clients for me.
Can I ask a quick question about
Sure.
the referral agreement and the W-9? I know we have incoming and outgoing or something referral forms with EXP. They don't have to necessarily be on our form, right?
Correct.
Okay.
That's my understanding anyway. If I'm wrong, I'll be corrected later, I guess, but that's my understanding.
Before we move on, could I ask a question?
Sure, Peter.
I am new to EXP and first time being a realtor, so I'm part of the mentor program. So I'm the DA, and where we're at right now with making sure things are where they need to be at the closing table. How does all that play out?
So whenever you're putting things in Skyslope, there is a place, I think to say about it, there's a place for notes. And I believe most of those that are in the mentor program will put in there who their mentor is. And then also too, behind the scenes, our transaction team has a list of the mentors and mentees as well. Make a note in there and just say, so-and-so is my mentor.
So as long as EXP is there on the contract when we close, that'll be caught within the company.
Hopefully so. It should be.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure. No problem. So in residential leases, it's a much shorter list. The still broker approval file is required, and there's not anything for you to upload there in that spot. The MLS sheet is required if it was in MLS. You should, when you represent the tenants, you should have an application for the tenants. Now, I know more and more people are going to online applications, so if you don't have it, we understand it. But you typically, most folks still on a residential lease will take the TAR application. And so you're going to be scanning it in and sending it over to the other agent anyway, so just upload it into Skyslope as well. And then the IABS is required. And then if you get a copy of the executed lease, we would love to see it uploaded. We understand you may not always have a copy of it. EXP invoice is required. You can find this in Skyslope, again, under working docs, then office docs. I know in Houston, I think it's unusual in that area to do an invoice. And so our Houston agents kind of have to get used to, that's how we operate. That helps our accounting team out tremendously to have that invoice, so they know how to apply the lease and the split out on the lease and the funds when they get the check in. Now we do have a different.
Could we get an example of one of those maybe posted so we can see how it should be filled in?
Sure, I can't do it right this minute, Jacqueline, but yeah, I can do one. I can send one out later. That would have been good in the presentation to have that.
No. It just would help us, because I'm one of those that didn't realize we had to do those. So that would be great.
Understood. Apartment leases. An apartment is defined as an apartment. It seems silly that I need to say that, but an apartment lease is not, it's not a duplex. It's what we think of as apartments. You drive into the parking lot and there's a whole bunch of units in front of you. That's an apartment lease. We do have some agents who are doing some apartment locating. And so we understand there's times they're not even going to meet their clients. So, what do we do here? In that situation, on leases that are for 12 months or more, an IABS is still required. That is TREC law. If you cannot get an IABS signed, at minimum, we want to see where you emailed that client, and we want to see that there was an IABS attached and that you sent it to them asking them to initial it and send it back to you. So at least you can show you delivered it, you got it to them. And then we require the EXP invoice. This is not enough information if it's a residential lease or if it's a duplex or a condo. This is only for apartment buildings. So in that instance, then the TCs do approve them. It's not just the broker that's looking at it and approving it. So that is how to get paid every time. Now, what questions do you all have that I've not gone over or that we need to go back and cover?
I've never done an apartment lease, so I have a question regarding that, because there are some people that have asked me. Do you have to be certified to do that?
You do not have to be certified, is my understanding. I'm not the best one to ask on that, on all the ins and outs. I definitely would get to know some agents that have done a lot of apartment locating and kind of find out the ins and outs. I know there's different places that you can go to and sign up for to search for apartments, and I think there's a fee for that. And then also too, some of the apartments, we have to be an approved vendor. So it would be wise to ask them ahead of time if we're on their approved vendor list, because you don't sending clients over to an apartment only to find out we're not approved, and so you just did your work for free. And then, Jacqueline, you're right on the CDA. Make sure when you get your CDA that the mentor is listed. Your CDA should have your name on it, the name of your mentor, and then the name of eXp Realty.
Okay. And
I'm sorry?
no, I forgot my question.
Okay.
I'm trying to hold it because Ron said, don't type it. Ron, so ADD, you have no idea.
And then Indy, no, I'm not saying you need to present the IABS to the apartment manager. No, you need to send the IABS to the client, to the person that's renting the apartment. And then where can you find the DA form? The DA is created by the transaction team, by the DA specialist. So it's not anything for you to find, and it's uploaded to Skyslope. And typically it's also sent out to the title company.
Linda, you mentioned if the apartment lease is 12 months or more. What if it's less?
Per TREC, an IABS is not required for things that are less than 12 months. Again, still best practices to present it anyway. But per TREC, if it's less than 12 months, it's not required.
Thank you.
So on the IABS, what's the best way to get that onto our website?
It's send an email to jeffrey.bittner@exp, and he can put it, I think it's a Google shared drive or something that, and there's a whole video about how to do that.
That was Jeffrey Bentner.
I'll put it in the text chat, but Jeffrey, JEFFREY.Bittner, BUETTNER @exprealty.com.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Well, yes, but I can't remember one. But Sheila and Ron, I did want to just take a minute to give a huge shout out to our TC teams. I mean, these guys and gals are just unbelievably cool and so helpful. And so I, personally, am really grateful to everything that my TC does for me. And I just know that they're working their fannies off.
Yeah, they are. They are.
All of us. So, A, I want them to know how much they're appreciated, and B, I think that anything that anybody that's in this meeting can do to, follow the suggestions that you put out there. I mean, it'll only come back in huge dividends to you. So, because they'll be grateful for you not making their lives so hard.
Yeah, and they remember all the agents. They know the agents that typically kind of, upload everything, and those that don't, but they're willing to help you in any way they can. But just remember, there's only 4 or 5 of them, and there's over 1,200 of us. They're working on well over 1,000 transactions every month, and they're inputting a lot of the stuff behind the scenes that we don't ever think about, whether it be in the old Guru system, putting it in the new enterprise system. They're really going over and above, and they have a lot of detail that they see about and take care of. So anything we can do on our end to help them helps them have a life after hours. So.
No kidding. Hey, listen. Okay, I just remembered. Thank God. My other question, and I'm so sorry, but I did want to know what eXp's policy is on agent property management.
On an agent managing their own personal property.
My old broker, you and I don't want to do property management, but I have a lot of clients that ask. And so in my old brokerage, you weren't allowed to do property management unless you were a broker.
Right. That's a TREC rule.
That is a TREC rule. Okay, good. I didn't know that. Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, that is a TREC rule. It is a violation and because there are strict laws and rules in place for property managers. And EXP does management in any way, shape, or form.
Wow.
So you have to be a broker. You have to have a separate LLC. You have to carry your own E&O insurance, and you have to sign an addendum to your ICA stating you understand EXP has nothing to do with this.
Do you have any idea how many people are out there? Not in our company, obviously, but there's a lot of folks out there that are not heeding TRECs.
Yeah, and it carries some serious fines.
It's terrible. I mean, I have a really good. I know of one really, really fabulous property management group that I refer everybody to. And so I just wasn't sure, and I really appreciate you clarifying that that's a TREC rule, not a
Right.
broker.
No, that is a TREC rule. That is a TREC rule. There was a property manager over in the Houston area a few months ago that sustained very stiff penalties simply because she had made one deposit into the wrong account, not the trust account. And it was, I think, over a $10,000 fine. And it was an innocent mistake. It wasn't any kind of collusion or commingling or anything happening. It was just an innocent mistake.
Wow.
So they take it
Very seriously. Well, thank you.
Stephanie, is EXP set up as an authorized user for the do not call list? Yes, I will look. I know I have that information someplace. I don't remember where it is, but yes, we are. And remember, we are responsible to follow that as well. Okay, any other questions? I suspect Ron's probably turned the recording off at this point.
Not yet, but
SHEILA?
I will right now.
Okay.